Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of Parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, his face black, his eyes red.
Scott, the River Scott, in winter.
Darmok.
And Jalad, at Tanagra.
Darmok and Jalad on the ocean.
So I don't know if anyone's going to get that, man.
That's fine. We're not going to explain it.
Okay, let's move on. This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of poop collecting, terrible greenhouse patios, and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week, we continue with Arc 14 Breaking, covering chapters 14.4 and 14.5. Victoria and company meet up with some old friends and head to Earth Shin. What was supposed to be a friendly conversation and PR mission quickly becomes something else, as the Shinners make Gary Nieves look like the world's #1 Cape fan. Meanwhile, Victoria is handling being around her sister super, super well. Matt, what did you think about these two chapters?
Well, these were awesome. We continue the trend, seemingly, of Breaking being a very dialogue-heavy arc. And once again, it is a kind of dialogue which is extremely tense. There's a very new kind of tension, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I agree. It's this year, like, I think that it's a pair of really interesting chapters because, like, I think we ended 14.3 with the ideas like you're gonna have to go see your family, and we don't really get the Amy interaction until the end of 2 chapters later, right? So we spend almost a chapter and a half building to this interaction, building to this moment where she's caught in a room with these people, and I think that build is so wonderful. And
yeah,
the second chapter in particular, 14.5, like worked on me so well. I was just knocked over by how good some of the stuff in this chapter was.
Yeah, it's extremely intense for being, basically dialogue, right?
Right. There's been no action in this arc so far.
Yeah, and it's funny because you were being sarcastic when you said that Victoria's handling being around her sister super well, but it's interesting because at the beginning of toward the beginning of the story, for most of the story, it would be very difficult to contemplate or to believe that Victoria would willingly put herself in this position the way she has here, right? And she's actually thinking things to herself like, I wanted to face, my fears the way my teammates had, which previously it's been like she either wants to avoid it at all costs or she basically kind of had to in a few previous situations.
Yeah.
And this time she put herself in the situation on purpose, and it's hard for her. It really is. But I think it's really cool that she was able to get herself to that place.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we need to give her credit for that where we can.
Yeah. All right, so let's get on into things. Announcements. The fan art contest is over for this quarter. The winner is a piece of art shared by...
Should I do a drum roll? How do we want to do this?
Yeah, do a drum roll. That'll sound really good. That sounds great. That's... excellent.
You got to read the thing while I'm doing the drum roll, man.
Phoenicia or Phoenica.
I don't know.
And it's a beautiful piece of art. It's a black and white image featuring Sveta and Victoria. I think you might think that like the winner was this art was shared by Phoenicia, but the name of the art is shared. That is the name of the piece. Thank you for clarifying. The name of the art is shared.
Yes,
and it is by Phoenica.
Yeah. It's a beautiful artwork. We're looking at it right here in our script. Congratulations, Phoenica, whatever. Congratulations. I absolutely love this artwork.
Yeah.
And of course, we do have a runner-up, though, Matt.
Runner-up is called "You Can Come Home Anytime" by Number Wangman, and it's a really cool. I love the style of it. It's Danny telling Taylor she can come home anytime as she storms off with her enabler in chief, Lisa. coaxing her away from her loving home into a life of crime.
Yeah, it's a great piece. Great pieces all around. No Ashtoria artwork at all, Matt. None of it. Like, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it.
I'm wondering if this is one of those situations where everyone else just assumed that they were like all going to be Ashtoria, meme submissions, but no, there was zero. So
yeah, I agree. So you can check out those two winners as well as all the other entries at the link in our show notes. That'll take you over to our webpage where we'll show all the artwork. Congratulations to the two of you. We will be in contact with you guys very soon about getting your winnings over to you via email. So just look out for those emails from us. And once again, I love doing these. I think it's so fun. And I look forward to seeing what you guys do next quarter.
Yeah, everyone remember in these contests, the first prize is $100 US.
Yeah.
And runner up is $25. So
we should switch that over to doof dollars.
Doof.
Exchangeable at a doof store.
Oh, God. All right, let's get on into the chapter.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, 14.4, and we begin with the heroes bringing in their damage control in response to, well, everything that happened last week. Breakthrough's damage control is Kenzie, which is just a terrible sentence.
Oh, good. Yeah.
They travel to what is basically a safe house in the abandoned area of town near the portals to meet with the wardens who've brought Natalie. Victoria wonders if Natalie is part of handling Breakthrough, but shortly after, Miss Militia says that it's because the denizens of Shin might be happier with a non-parahuman face around.
Poor Natalie, always being pulled into the scariest shit.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's funny because Victoria's like, I can't possibly imagine why she's here.
Yeah, it's got to be for us, right? No, it's not. So this is, for all intents and purposes, a bridge chapter. And what I mean by that is, the main point of this is just to transport us both literally and figuratively from the end of the previous tension, which was the whole conversation with Gary, into this new tension, the meeting and subsequent Dallin reunion that's going to occur on Shin. And I was thinking about this a lot because I could see a world in which this book or a book like it would cut this, right? It would cut immediately from the end of 14.3 is like, oh, your parents want to see you. And then 14.4 in this hypothetical world starts with them walking through the portal into Shin, and we move right into that second tension. I could see a world in which that happens. But I think that the way Wildbow doesn't do that here is actually one of the things that makes his works as successful as they are. Because I think in this case, Wildbow's using the length and this bridge chapter to stretch out the tension, right? We have this looming thing coming up, this meeting with Amy, this meeting with her mother, like this going to Shin. And because we have this chapter to really just stretch that tension out as far as we can, it really builds it up. It's like she's sitting in this anxiety for almost a chapter and a half before she gets locked into that greenhouse. And I just feel like the fact that we took the time, the fact that the book took the time, and this is a long book, like Wildbow writes long stories, but in moments like these, I think they use that length as efficiently as possible to just sit us in that anxiety, and it helps build that tension up. You feel a little more because you're slowly walking towards it, just as Victoria is slowly walking towards it.
Yeah. I mean, it also gives him a lot of time to set up all of the threads that are required to make it as awesome as it ends up being, right? Like, I can't even count off the top of my head how many characters are traveling with them to Shin, right? Like they could have left out like Vista, or like they could have not brought all of Breakthrough, right? Like I think sometimes the actual move you want to do is you want to bring one or two people and focus on them, right? But
yeah,
I think that Wildbow is really good at setting up complex situations with a lot of people and having it work out and not feel like overly busy.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's a good point, because one of the things I think this chapter specifically is doing some Kenzie shit. There's a lot of Kenzie stuff in this chapter. And you would think in this bridge chapter where we're moving us from Victoria dealing with Gary to Victoria dealing with Shin and Amy, there wouldn't be a lot of time for some other stuff going on. But under the surface of all this anxiety related to Victoria's coming conversation and interaction with her sister is like these Kenzie red flags, like popping up constantly throughout the chapter. They're everywhere. And I mean, even here, like the start of this chapter declares this almost the Kenzie red flag chapter, because the opening words are like, we brought in Kenzie, like our crisis management. Here she is. She's an 11-year-old girl. And now we're going to like systematically like show how maybe not good this 11-year-old girl is doing.
Yeah. How maybe you shouldn't be putting this kind of pressure on her, possibly.
Right. Yeah.
So speaking of the other people who are present, we've got Golem, Vista, and Miss Militia. Victoria conspicuously can't meet Miss Militia's eyes. Ugh. And we don't really know why, right? Like we get snippets of stuff like, she met my eyes, that vague shadow loomed closer, and I looked away. And I love how the text kind of leaves us a while to figure out what's going on here. Because like all we really get for now by way of clarification is Victoria like single sentence saying Miss Militia had been there, and even that is not like there. What? And like you can remember, right? If you think about this book for hours a week like we do, you can remember what that means. But
right.
Like she kind of refuses to make the connection until later. She does later though.
Well, and the thing that I love about it too is like that statement, Miss Militia had been there, is in her head, right? Like this is her in her mind's eye, and her internal narrative, her internal dialogue, talking to herself. And even there, she can't bring it up. Like it's not like she's talking to someone else and she doesn't want to say the words, right? This is literally, she doesn't even want to think it. She's avoiding thinking it to herself. This is for nobody but her, and she can't even do it there. And I think that's something you kind of forget, I think, at times when you're reading these books, that like we are in first person perspective. We are in someone's head. When they say things like that, they're not doing it for our sake. They're doing it for their sake.
Yeah. She can't even bear to make that connection, right? Yeah. That's one thing this book does so well. I mean, we've talked about it plenty, but the way that it portrays kind of the way we flinch away from things in our own thoughts via text. I've never seen anything that does it better.
Yeah, and I mean it's so accurate, and I catch myself doing it, and I don't know if I've ever put to word, I'm like, oh, I'm really Victoria-ing it, but now I'm gonna do that. Like everyone has moments where they like just connect dots to a random memory they don't want to think about, be it like an embarrassing thing you did years ago, and then you're like, oh my god, remember when I did that thing?
Yeah or something traumatic or painful. It flows exactly the way Wildbow describes it here. It's perfect. you turn the wheel as hard as you can away from that, right? The second you make that connection to that memory, you're like, nope. Yeah. And you try to push away from it as quickly as possible. Yeah, it's great. I really love Victoria in this early part of the chapter, because like it's clear that she's not doing well, right? Like she's dealing with this. She describes it as this vague shadow looming into her field of vision, and she does what Victoria does in those moments. She's like, okay, what can I focus on? What can I focus on that's safe? Fashion. Yes, fashion. And she like goes into these really in-depth discussions of Vista, Golem, and Miss Militia's costume. She dives into those discussions of their costume. Yeah, I didn't notice that, but that's absolutely right. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that she points out that Golem doesn't have the like fan or the skirt that he. Yeah. So I wonder if he has some other solution. That was just kind of a tangent.
Or maybe like he's specifically presenting himself as nonviolent here. Like he's not going to use his power, so he took the skirt off. I don't know. I
like that thought. Yeah.
The thing that I love about this though is that even in her attempt to like push away and like focus on something that's safe, that is the costumes, she still like takes the time to note the gold morning armbands. Like she says, Vista and Miss Militia wore armbands. Golem had the emblem marked on one of his biceps. So this is they've got new costumes, they've got new looks, but the past is still there, looming just like that vague shadow. Right. I think that's it's so fascinating to me that she jumps into that, and because we don't get that pointed out every time, right? Like it's not every time we see characters that were there for Gold Morning that we point out the badge they're wearing. But I think when we do, it's specific. And here it's like here's the past, here's the bad thing looming over the good thing. Even as you're trying to distract yourself, just that stuff just keeps coming back.
I like that. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's interesting that she points it out here and doesn't normally.
Yeah.
And it's a cool idea, right? Like especially here, the connotations of wearing that armband are so muddled, right? Like if you're a parahuman and you have the armband, you're basically saying, yeah, I was one of the people who helped save the world from Scion. You're also communicating, hey, remember when the world was almost destroyed because of Wave's Hand's Parahumans?
Yeah, that's true.
So in this particular context, it's particularly muddy because these Shin people are like, they don't seem to have any real appreciation for the fact that Good Morning was averted by Parahumans. They're just like,
no,
yeah, wipe them out basically.
Yep.
At least some of them. So we learned a lot about Shin on the course of this chapter, right? Like,
is that how I'm supposed to pronounce it?
Apparently, it's closer to Shin than it is to Shin.
I'm not going to remember that.
It doesn't matter. I've just accepted that we're going to say things the way we're going to say them. But anyway, I like that this chapter does a lot of legwork in terms of setting up what we should expect when we get to Shin, so that when we get to the next chapter, we're just kind of there. They can focus on the dialogue and kind of the weirdness of what's going on with the dialogue, which I think is really important, because if we waited to learn this stuff until we got to Shin, then it would be too much. It would be overwhelming. It would be fantasy syndrome of too many new things, and you don't care, and it's just weird.
I think it would hurt the tension a little bit. It would cut it. I think you're right. I think that's another thing that this bridge chapter helps us do, is it gets that out of the way, so when we're there we can sit in the tension and not cut away to, and this is the story of the land bridge, and this is the story of I think you're right.
Yeah. Speaking of bridges, we learn about this land bridge between I guess Eurasia and North America on Shin. So that's cool.
Yeah, the thing I like most about this is, like, Rain kind of once again jumps into the audience surrogate moment here, where they're like, "Oh, the blah 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 land bridge," and he's like, "I don't know what that means."
Yeah,
like he gets to ask the questions because we can't, and it's I mean, audience surrogate characters are really important in stories like this, especially stories where they're creating whole other worlds. So Rain is very perfectly slotted into that position, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So I love Miss Militia's approach here, and just her whole character in general, because, like, she's noticing that Victoria is freaking out, especially every time she says the name Amy, because Victoria doesn't say anything. She doesn't say, don't say that name. She's just ostentatiously flinching, I think. Mm-hmm. The text doesn't say that either. We just have Miss Militia noticing something. And Hannah says, "Is there a way you'd prefer me to refer to her? Her old Cape name? Her old name? Her name that she goes by when with her father?" "Doesn't matter," I said, "but thanks for the option." Amelia Claire Levere negotiated the peace, but neglected to mention any problems or issues in controlling her power. So it's like Victoria's like, no, and then Miss Militia immediately proceeds to say, like, the most ridiculous, like, I mean, it's not ridiculous, right? It's her full name, but it's like, it's so far away from the way Victoria thinks about her that it actually, I think, serves the function that Miss Militia intends it to.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkably astute of her to even in Victoria's like, no, it doesn't matter, is to pick the name that is as far removed from her any relation to Victoria as possible. Yeah. Not her old hero name when she was in the team with Victoria, not Amy, the name when she lived with the family. No, and it's her full name, right? It's not just Amelia, it's Amelia Claire Levere. Like, it's the full formal name. It is so depersonalized and removed. It's great. It's a great little beat of characterization. First of all, that she would notice and ask, and then second of all, that she would be observant enough to pick something that I think is probably out of all these names is the easiest for Victoria to handle. Yeah,
absolutely. And she just does it without really. She's not like, Victoria's not really helping her out in terms of dealing with the situation, but Miss Militia's just going to handle it, right? She's the hero.
I think it also kind of level sets maybe what the warden's opinion of her is right now. You know, like, we're not calling her Panacea, right? We're not calling her hero name anymore. She is not a hero anymore. We see her as the name she uses when she's around her villainous father, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of maybe what other people think of Amy. Yeah,
right. They're also not calling her the Red Queen, which is probably a good move at this point.
Probably a good call. Yeah. Right. Is anyone calling her that besides Dot, who is mysteriously missing?
I don't know. I mean, I am, but yeah, where is Dot? She's probably,
I don't know.
She's probably going to show up though.
Probably.
So I love how Tristan objects to the quarantine procedures that they're going to be subjected to.
Yeah, I'm glad you stopped to talk about this because I mean, there's funny bits in here, right, about the idea that like you have to, collect your poop and bring it with you. You have to you have to fast for a little bit. He's not cool with not eating. But there's this bit again with the shots, right? And this is the second time we've circled back around to Tristan's issue with needles, his fear of needles. And we were talking about this in the Doof Discord the other day, and I forget who it was, so apologies for not giving you credit, but someone pointed out the idea that, like, well, Tristan, he's during his trigger event, he stabbed his brother. While they were fighting, he was being choked by Byron, and he stabbed him. And then, of course, while Byron was at some of his lowest points in their early part of their Cape life, he was self-harming by stabbing himself. So, like, it's not too outlandish to think that he developed an uncomfortableness with the feeling of being punctured by both of these memories that kind of track onto him. And I just really like that as like a consistent character beat that comes out in this new interesting way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fairly minor, right? Like it's not like he can't get the shots. He's just like really not happy about it. And it definitely kept him from giving blood to Sveta previously. Yeah.
And I wonder if we're building to anything with this, because it's like a couple times within pretty rapid succession. Are we going anywhere with I don't know. Just in the back of my head.
Yeah, right. No, I think it's I don't know. I mean, it definitely all seemed very in character for Tristan. Even like being reluctant to carry around a poop bag was just very like, yeah, I absolutely think that is a Tristan characteristic to just be like, no.
Maybe he'll just say, Byron, could you please hold my poop bag in the other dimension?
See why is he even whining? Whichever one of them is phased out could just hold the poop bag. See?
Like, I know holding the poop bag while you're in the other dimension is not actually holding the poop bag, right? Because like you're not going to feel or smell the bag of poop. However, just the feeling of I have teleported into my pocket dimension with a bag of shit is icky.
Yeah. For all you know, your power like mushes together all the molecules when it pushes you back out.
It is part of you now.
Yeah, right.
How terrifying would it be if he comes back out and it's gone?
Yeah.
Where'd it go?
I want to know if they've ever like had a bug on their body and then it phased out and then phased back in and seen what happened.
Oh God.
This is becoming a tangent.
You just did Cronenberg there. Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah. So Victoria's still on her we need lasting decisive solutions, not more band-aids kick. And Miss Militia is like, well, sorry, this mission probably isn't going to be that.
Yeah, and I really like this. I like this a lot. I like the way that the book's going with this because like we have this character who in arc 13 she was beaten down and just got so tired of losing or like just eking out a barely counts victory that she was like, I want permanent solutions now. I this is what I want. And then she said, she looked at Sveta and she said, here's a place where I can get a permanent solution. Let's do it. And then it's like, fuck yeah, it worked. It worked. I did it.
Yeah,
she did. It worked. And she's like, okay, so this is me now. This is my MO now. It's like I'm done with stopgaps. I'm done with temporary things. I want permanent solutions to problems now. And then she's thrown into her first real conflict after that, and people are like, no, like that's sorry, like that's. It's not going to be that type of mission. Like there's what is the permanent solution here? Like there's nothing for you here. And this made me think back to that idea when we talked to the when we asked the question about should Sveta do this, and one person I don't remember who it was, but one person answered something to the effect of just because you got lucky doesn't mean it was the right choice, right? And so we got this idea that Sveta they made the choice and it worked so far, right? There's no ill effects of the decision that was made so far. So Victoria's kind of motivated by that success. But is that a good thing? I don't know. Like if you start saying I need the permanent solutions, then are you going to push yourself further and further out to get them, even in situations like this one where it doesn't seem like there are going to be one?
Right. I love that it's Miss Militia who's kind of I don't know if foil is the right word here, but kind of opposite Victoria here, because Miss Militia is established as this substantially more mature and older. I mean, for whatever, I don't actually know what their age difference is, but she strikes me as being more mature and older, like experienced beat cop type cape. And here her role with Shin has been as basically an ambassador, and like that's like the least conclusive job in the world, right? Like when you think ambassador, you don't think like person who makes bold, sweeping, decisive movements, right? They're just like, no, they incremental, tiny little compromise after compromise after compromise. Nobody ever just wins in this situation, right? So it's like a very Miss Militia just seems like someone who really doesn't have this bug that Victoria has right now. This we need to fix everything permanently bug, because her whole life has been just like, pushing back the tide, right?
Yeah.
It's cool. I want to see where this develops, right? Like what role Miss Militia is going to play here, because she hasn't been in the story very much, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of points from this general idea that the book could really go to, and I think it's great to see her. And Miss Militia is a character from the old book that was very, very good, right? Like she was probably, like you said, she was kind of in Victoria's position back in Worm, where she was just kind of exhausted by this, and like just so tired by feeling like she never made progress. And so I think we've seen a more mature side of her. You're absolutely right. So let's see where this goes.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that at this point, Victoria and the rest of the team are still being extremely close to the vest with Cryptid's real identity.
Yeah, I'm not clear on like the number of people that actually do know about it. Like how much of this did Dragon share to like the wardens and everyone else? I don't know. It doesn't, like, Miss Militia doesn't give any indication that she is aware, but probably, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't know. It seems obvious. It seems like Shin don't, or maybe they didn't before and they do now, and that's why they're mad. I
mean, when they meet him in the next chapter, or is it, I think the end of this chapter, he specifically is still calling himself a changer, and Victoria specifically points that out. He's like, he's still keeping up the charade. So
and I feel like Nieves would have mentioned something about this.
Yeah, if that was public knowledge, I think he would have pulled that. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah, because I don't know why I assumed that it was just public knowledge now, but I guess I should not have assumed that, because there's really no indication that it was. So anyway, just to note that that's in play.
Yeah.
So Kinsey Watch 2019 text. Kinsey hugged her friend as soon as her arms were free. Oh no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the weird thing about this is, like, sometimes we talk about how like Victoria is almost overly overt, where it specifically tells you like exactly what's going on here, and Victoria specifically observes it and comments on it and ruminates on it. This is not one of those moments. This goes entirely unobserved from Victoria outside of the physical action itself, right? Yeah. Like she doesn't make any internal note to herself. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't seem to be concerned about this. It just kind of happens, and it's like, and I think that continues throughout the rest of this chapter. All these Kinsey red flags are popping up, and we're not hearing anything from Victoria. And I think it's just because she's too distracted. Like she's too focused on that looming shadow that's coming, and that she's not seeing this stuff. And nobody seems to be seeing this stuff. And I'm like, guys, don't you see?
I agree completely. Yeah, her head's not in the game. She may even miss something else important, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think you've actually noticed more of the Kinsey red flags than I have, but the fact that the first thing she does is she hugs someone, which is kind of breaking her rules, which we've been kind of primed to think of that as her backsliding. Mm-hmm. There's a few other things I think we'll hit as we move on.
Yeah.
So Tristan remarks that he's alarmed that Victoria is talking about permanent solutions for dealing with a sibling. Of course, you can see why he'd be worried about that.
Yeah.
And Victoria's like, no, that's not what I meant. And Tristan's like, if you say so.
Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of the danger of going down that road, right? Of saying, I'm not going to make any choice unless it leads to a permanent solution to a problem. When you start saying things, when you're like, we need a permanent solution to Amy, you start using words like that, what does that sound like? And that sounds like things that are troubling, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, like in context of our theme of recovery, this idea of trying to get better, what is a permanent solution to recovering from trauma? Does that exist? And I'm not talking about getting better. Like, obviously you can get to a point in your life where you are better, where you are able to live with this thing more and be a better person. But is there a permanent solution? Are you saying that never in your life? It's just like the idea of, is there a permanent solution to addiction, right? Is there a permanent solution to being addicted to something? No, there's not. Like, there's you learn to live with it.
Yeah, well, or I think reasonable people can disagree on that question, but that doesn't add any clarity to it, right? Like that just means there's no real answer to that question.
Yeah.
And I mean, it reminds me of Sveta's, I want to be her, right? It's a way of saying a permanent solution would be, I want things to be the way they were before. And it's like, well, that I can guarantee you that is the one thing that is not possible.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, we look at this and we look at this idea of permanent solutions, and this is the thing she wants. And I'm wondering, like, if Sveta isn't just cured now, right? Like, if she's not just all better, yay, how Victoria's going to deal with that, because she looks at that as like, as finally I did it. Finally, I found a permanent solution to this problem, and that is going to be what I'm going to do everywhere else. And what if that in this problem we can't have a permanent solution outside of killing your sister? In this one with Sveta, it's actually has not solved all her problems. Like, there's a lot of room here to explore this idea of permanent solutions to trauma in really interesting ways. And this part right here made me really excited for what the book is going to do with that in the future.
Yeah, me too. And it's good that Tristan's kind of watching out for her, because I think he may know where her head is at better than most of the other people on the team, actually, because he has this exact overlap of murderous sibling feelings.
Yeah. And I mean, we keep going back to this, but this way in which each member of Breakthrough, in their own specific way, tie into Victoria and the things that she's going through, I think it continues to be beautifully constructed for me. Like, I think it works so well.
Right.
And we've kind of moved on to the next one now. And
I just love that the seating chart is textual. It's not.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So so Kinsey remarks that today she's already saved a kidnapped kid. And her friend Candy messed one guy up so bad. But then, it's fine. She demurs that. Good.
And this is another thing that Victoria kind of just lets slide. She doesn't comment on this at all. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe he deserved it, this kidnapper guy. But these are people that Kenzie's hanging out with. This is her team. And there's Candy going too far again. And it's just like, no one seems to be worried about this.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the question I have for you, and this is the question I think we have to keep asking ourselves throughout this entire arc. Is any of this performative for Teacher?
I don't think. Well, not on Victoria's part, and I'm not sure if Kinsey is even.
Yeah, did they even go through that? I don't think the book has said that, like, they brought Kinsey in on their fake out stuff. Yeah.
I feel like Kinsey would not be doing that, right? Like the thing about that line that really jumped out to me was when Kinsey said so bad. Like, for me, Kinsey always tends to like downplay things that are bad. Yeah. So if she said that it was so bad, it must have just been.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Really
it's
bad.
It's real bad. The cops didn't care though, so it's fine.
Right. Yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, we know that, just to say it out loud, like Kinsey does this thing where if the people that she likes are doing horrible things, then that's totally fine.
Yep.
And they weren't actually horrible things.
Not only totally fine, but that's like what people do, right?
Yeah.
Like
right. That's probably laudable in some way. Yeah. So Vista is here. Apparently she's constantly using her power just to make her costume look cooler, which is awesome. I also fully, expect that she has like an inch of steel covering every part of her body.
An inch, Matt? You gotta go bigger than that, like a meter.
See, that's what I would expect her to do that if I didn't think weight was a concern, but I'm pretty sure that weight is a concern. But
is it?
I thought it was, but maybe not.
Yeah, you're probably right. There needs to be limitations to this thing.
Yeah, because otherwise she'd be like Chevalier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Kinda.
So Yeah, as Vista warps the team across the city using a rooftop as a shuttle. It's hard to visualize this, but I mean, well, okay. I actually had a fine time visualizing it. It's just that I'm not sure if I'm visualizing it right.
It's a donut.
She's warping the building across the city, basically, so they don't have to get off the building, and then they just step off the building onto a place across the city.
It's the donut.
And then they get to the portal. Miss Militia gives us a bit of an info dump on Shin as we're traveling, and Wildbow gets that world building engine revving.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to this a little bit more in the next chapter, but what this specific kind of world building, I think, is a little bit different from most of the Wildbow world building I've seen. And I'll say this having only read these two books and a very little bit of Pact. Most of what the world building in these stories has been is like, take our world, add some supernatural elements, and then create the world around what those supernatural elements would do to the world as we know it. I've never really seen him like just build a world, you know? And I think like that seems to be some of the muscles that are being flexed for the Shin stuff, that he's just kind of, we're just going to build a world. And this is the customs of the world. We're going to explain it, why they do this, why they act like this, what their history was. And I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think I can speak for Twig. Like, that's actually very different because it's not present day. But from the perspective of the characters, this is just how things are. Like, he doesn't do the old joke of like, Scott, for our visit coming soon, would you like to take a locomotive, an aircraft, or a motor vehicle? Here are the pros and cons of the three different conveyances. Like, no, it's just like we live in this world together. We there's a common base of knowledge, and we don't belabor the features of the world to each other, and the characters in his stories also don't. Mm-hmm. But here they're traveling to a new world, and so they are belaboring the differences to each other because it's important that they understand the differences.
Yeah, and
that's really cool. So, like you said, this is more like I suppose naked world building because we're learning what the actual differences are, and that's cool. Yeah, so Kinsey kind of out of nowhere tells Byron that she's finished the twin camera she was working on, and before Byron is allowed to signal approval of this, Swansong checks that Kinsey didn't stay up all night working on it. Byron then gives her a hug, and then this segues into a conversation about Darlene's new name, Kahoot.
Yeah, and so once again, we're spending a lot of time on this bridge chapter reminding and reestablishing some Kinsey stuff, right? She says here, no, I didn't stay up all night working on this thing. But the implication is she still was staying up all night, right? Like this line is like, only if you can say you didn't work yourself to the bone and stay up nights. I didn't. I really didn't. Good. I was working on other stuff. So you're still working yourself to the bone and staying up all night. It's just not on this.
Right.
And everyone's just like, just funny.
Right. Like, because Ashley like gives her a little fake ear tweak, and it's a funny moment, but also it's like, yeah, she was totally staying up all night. She hasn't been sleeping.
Yeah. And then the conversation shifts to the Kahoot conversation, and it's funny. Like, Darlene's name being Kahoot is hilarious. It's bad. It's so terrible. It's hilarious. But we just kind of move on, right? We just like, yeah, no, I didn't stay up all night working on this, but yeah, I'm totally staying up all night. I'm still working myself to the bone. Absolutely, these things are true. We have to remember that Victoria told Yamada last arc that she's really concerned about what's going on with Kenzie, and that Kenzie probably needs some help. And we're just like, these flags are popping up, and I'm just like, nobody's like, it's like the Kenzie red alert siren is running throughout the entire group, and everyone's just like, no, not Kahoot. And I'm just like, oh my god,
yeah,
my god, guys.
Right. And I mean, this is one of those situations where I'm concerned that she's like using her holograms to change her appearance or something terrible like that, you know?
Right.
Because I mean, and this isn't something that I've kind of said out loud or even thought, clearly, but like the threat here is she's found this new group of friends who are not, as far as we know, aware of her foibles and are not watching out for her in the way that Breakthrough is capable of. They're not providing the bumper rails for her.
Yeah.
And what she's going to do is she's going to try to impress them and get, well, I don't know if it's get sucked into their vortex or suck them into her vortex, but either way, completely lose all sense of proportion and backslide completely, right? And she's so good at hiding issues that could be happening right now, and Breakthrough wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and there's so much going on. There's so much tension here. So many characters. Like we have to go back to this idea that all of our characters are breaking a little bit, right? Like all of our characters are cracking. There's stuff going on, and everyone has their own stuff that they're dealing with, some tension that they're dealing with in their own life, and there's kind of an out of sight, out of mind here thing with Kenzie a little bit, with the exception of maybe Ashley, but she doesn't have a lens into that as well, and it's just it's terrifying. It really is. And we just keep banging this drum, and it's like freaking me out.
Well, and it's being played for comedy too, and I do think it is funny. Like I think what's funny.
No, I don't want to take away it is very funny. We should laugh. The book wants you to laugh at this. It's okay to laugh at this stuff, but under that laughter is stuff.
Yeah. Well, part of the laughter is anxiety, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the next joke, right?
Yeah. Like, no, I'm betting she has pictures of everyone on her phone. Not everyone, Kenzie said before pulling off a glove with her teeth so she could manipulate her phone. Her mouth obstructed, she muttered around the glove. Most people.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's not just most of all the.
Most everyone, right?
Guys.
And where your mind immediately goes is she really means most people, yes, probably, right?
Yeah, she's not. That's not like she's not speaking like figuratively, right? It's probably, she's like, well, most is like 78%. So yeah, that will do that.
Yeah.
And like, once again, nobody says anything.
Yeah. I mean, most people could also mean, as far as I know, everyone, but I might have missed someone.
I'm not comfortable saying everyone because I don't know 100% sure yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Oh my God.
So they reach the portal and they pass on into customs. And Scott, the interior was red and black checkered floor. Red and black checkered floor.
Oh, really?
The Red Queen's domain. Mm-hmm. And the name tags are yellows and red, which don't play into the Red Queen thing quite as much, but yellows and reds. We're bringing those color scheme.
Bringing those colors back. The warm, fiery, light-based color. Yeah, the checkerboard. So good. Okay, that's like going down the rabbit hole, going into Alice's domain or to the Red Queen's domain is like, it's perfect. I'm so glad you pulled that out.
Yeah, I think I passed it over in the first read actually, but yeah, it's awesome. I don't like. I don't remember if this is just the customs area, right? It's not the whole like place they go to that looks like this, is it? I don't remember. I don't think so.
No, this is just
Yeah. Okay. So Vicky and Sveta have this conversation where basically they're pointing out that Vicky might need to kind of be pulled back if she gets into it too much, and they agree that Sveta will touch her left ear as a signal that Victoria needs to walk away. This
is so cool because Sveta didn't have ears before.
Yeah,
I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I always thought she was literally a face.
Yeah, that's how it's described. And I looked at some of the fan art, and most of the fan art agrees. It's just face with tendrils. So yeah, I mean, like this is, and neither Victoria nor Sveta comment on this. The fact that this signal is something that literally like 2 weeks ago you could not have done. Like that, it would have been impossible for you to do. But I like it. It's just like in my mind, Sveta's like saying, "Oh yeah, I can do that signal now."
Yeah.
And Victoria's maybe like subconsciously like doing that to treat her as a person. And I think it's really great.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know if I noticed that as strongly as you did, but yeah, that's a cool moment.
But of course, Matt, the problem with this plan is that we know that Victoria can get very internal when it comes to Amy and the darkness that is attacking her mind, right? So while I agree that it's a good idea to have Sveta there, and it's a good idea for Sveta to have a signal in case Victoria is spiraling or something, the odds of her like seeing the signal in the midst of the worst case scenario, not great.
Yeah, And like, I'm just reminded of the time when she almost smashed Amy. And it's like there wasn't time for like a signal there.
Yeah, like if Sveta had an ear at that point, she would have been ripping it the fuck off.
Right. And there's also times where she just, when she gets angry, she's not the most rational person, right? Like she could get a signal to stop and just be like, fuck you. So yeah I don't know.
Maybe not. Maybe Sveta's the only one that could.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. Like, I'm not saying like this was a dumb idea. I'm just like that we're pointing out that like, I don't know if it's enough.
Well, I mean, the dumb idea, in my humble opinion, is going.
Yeah. Is Victoria specifically requested this time? I'm not sure what the message was.
It's kind of weird because so she gets. The wardens ask them to go to help smooth over the events of the Gary conversation because they would probably be the ones to best talk to that because they were the ones there. Her parents message her specifically asking for her to help smooth stuff over as well. So yeah, I mean, she has been specifically asked to come. Yes. Okay. But to her, going is not, they're asking me to and I have to. To her, going is, I've got to face my stuff. Because again, this permanent solution thing, I've got to face my problems. I've got to go do this. Sveta faced her problems. She has a body now. Great. I've got to go do this. I've got to do this so I can get over this stuff. Yep. And I don't know if you're ready for that yet.
Yep. I agree. So at this point, Golem asks Vicky and Sveta if they think Rain would be up for talking with somebody else from a bad background so they can kind of commiserate on their horrible people cultiness background.
It's my favorite part of the chapter. I love it to death. I don't know why that it never occurred to me that matching these two characters together is like really smart and great, but it is. I can't see how this could be negative for either of them, right?
Absolutely.
Like Golem is a great dude, and I think he could help Rain with some of his esteem issues and seeing what a person can become when they've escaped from this stuff. And then Rain is someone that can relate to him. So it's great. I want a whole book of these two just going on adventures.
I agree. That would be wonderful. I hadn't put it together quite that way that like Golem would be a great role model, actually.
Yeah. And like by adventures, I don't mean like hero work. I mean like just like a series of vignettes where they're just doing random shit around the town. Like they're going to a dance club and they're trying to dance with some ladies. They're having a cup of coffee and Golem's trying to help Rain with his love life. Yeah. They're like sitting in a laundromat, folding clothes while having a discussion of the complexities of guilt and redemption where one was forcibly raised in a very violent crime cult. You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Basic buddy stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when can this happen? How do we make this happen?
I don't know.
I even have a name for it. It's called the hand jobs.
Was this whole bit just a setup for that, or
no?
Oh, okay.
Okay, but it's a really good name though. They both do stuff with hands, and Rain got that hand job that one time.
Yeah, no, I got it. That's good. That's good stuff.
Don't diminish this. It's good. I'm proud of it.
It's really
good.
Don't
take this away from me.
I want to see this. I agree. I mean, most of what you just said was something that I would really like to see. Oh God!
Come on, there's hands. Golem makes the hands.
I get it. No, that's really good. In fact, I almost wonder if there's some synergy there. Like that would be cool, right? Yeah. I mean, more seriously, I like hands and hand tinkering and stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Jerk.
That's what you were talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I know. Okay. You know, I would just love to stay on the hand jobs for longer. But you're gonna laugh to yourself tomorrow. You'll just be sitting at work and you'll just chuckle about the hand jobs. I definitely will. Yep. Okay. So moving on from that. So here, speaking of Kinsey red flags, Kinsey gets a private air supply, which she then hides with her holograms, probably because she's hiding all kinds of other things. So why not?
Yeah.
This is something I noticed slightly more strongly on the reread. First of all, that something is like, wrong with her enough that she would need a private air supply, and then also interesting kind of Chekhov's gun that Kenzie now has her own private air supply, which is secret.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I think you're absolutely right that that's going to pay off in the literal sense that we're setting up something there. But I also like it as like a reflection of everything we've been talking about this chapter, all these red flags. She has her own air supply. like that's like she's like her. Take the physical and make it metaphorical, right? She's doing so much worse than everyone else that like we're not comfortable with her physical ability, and so we need to give her own air supply. Like that's how concerned people are for Kenzie in the physical realm going into this place. But let's talk about mentally, right? And it's just like it's terrifying. But yes, yeah. I also do think this is a literal specific setup for something.
Yeah, right. I didn't even notice it on that level the first time, but like, yeah, it seems to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really didn't jump out to me until I really started breaking down the moments in this chapter where Kenzie is like, ugh. Yeah. When you start stacking these moments together, and then you have a moment where we very, very conspicuously attach a breathing device to her that she very conspicuously vanishes. And it's like,
Yeah. I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So they get to Shin now, and it's pretty cool. You've got a lot of really interesting visual touches that just they don't remind me of anything. That's the cool thing. Like we've got guns draped in cloth and other strange weapons that Victoria doesn't even really know how to classify. We've got like murals on walls. We've got like really artistic architecture, often decorated with enormous statues. And like, yeah, I guess that's the best thing I can say for it is I'm not immediately like, oh, so it's, like Rome. It's like, no, it's like, it's weird. It's alien, right? It's different.
It's very different. And I love the temperature drop, right? Like this moment where they walk in and she says, into Shin, once goddess's earth, now Amy's. The temperature was easily 10 or 12 degrees lower than it had been in the megalopolis, and the sky was filled with snowdrifts. It didn't take away from it was a pretty amazing view. But I love this idea that this place is colder. Like we were going from a place that's cold to even colder, 10 to 12 degrees colder. It is like an overwhelming difference. I think it's so great. It's like, oh, you thought things were bad? Well, guess what? They're going to get worse.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that on a metaphorical level, right? Like it also adds to the tone of this chapter and the next chapter because basically from the time they enter, I would say from the time they enter kind of the customs area, we just begin ramping up this uncomfortable. I think she uses the word oppressive later, and that's a great like. It's interesting how Wildbow kind of slips that word in because oppressive then became my word for describing these chapters and their atmosphere. It's really great.
Yeah, it is the tone of these chapters, especially the next chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Vicky describes the 5 different Shin factions who are present at the meeting and their interesting clothing, from which she tries to infer things about their positions on things and in the world. Basically, she's using her fashion powers to good effect for some diplomacy.
I continue to love how we do this, how Wildbow takes a trait and uses it to explore the world from that specific scope or angle. Like Victoria does it, Taylor did it in her own way. I think it's such an inventive way to, in the world, do descriptions and explanations and ponderings. I keep loving it. I keep loving it.
Yeah, me too. So joining them is Marquis and Spruce, and also Amy and Chris.
That's the weirdest way you've ever said Marquis before, ever.
I had to add an extra K sound. Chris is tall now. He's all grown up, but he still looks uncanny. Basically, by her description, he's more stretched and distorted than he is like actually grown.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this as like a representation of Chris's quote unquote progress or lack thereof as a person, and it's a little weird because Chris is like reverse of everyone else, right? Where Sveta wants to move away from being the quote unquote monster. Chris wants to chase being the monster. But I mean, do you think like this is specifically pointing like what we see from Chris in these chapters is a guy who is more agitated, is worse and more confrontational in just about every way. And I just think like the way he looks is a great telegraph for that he's less Chris-like. He's backslid in a very specific kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say, and I don't know if this is the read that I'm meant to have, but like the fact that he's taking on an adult body better matches Lab Rat, not Chris. 'Cause
Yeah.
Chris is basically a kid. Like, he's literally 2 years old actually. But
Yeah.
but I mean, at least like the adolescent Chris was closer to who Chris really is on the inside.
Yeah. And well, he's
yeah.
he's wanting to be more monstrous, but he's not a monster here, right? Like he's still a human. He's just a distorted, like almost rushed version of what an adult would look like, right? He's trying to look older now. He's trying to be that adult person, but doing it in ways in which are distorted and screwed up, almost as if he's not really mature.
Yeah, he's forcing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think we've seen him in Chris form in a long time. Like he was pretty much changed for like the entire end of the goddess arc, and then he's been changed in like all the pictures that we've seen. So I wonder if there's like a specific reason why he's not changed here. Because you get the sense if it were up to him, he would just always be changed. So
yeah, I mean, I wonder this very anti-cape society, how cool they would be with a guy in monster form.
Yeah, that could be part of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the chapter ends with a note of extreme tension as Miss Militia kind of gives the group a signal and says that one of the groups who was on the Parahuman side has been replaced and that everybody might need to be ready to fight.
Yeah, be ready to use your powers is such a wonderful note to end the chapter on, because the chapter made specific point that once they got to Shin, even Vista was not using her power to make them get to the meeting quicker. Like she wasn't closing the distance anymore. They just had to walk. It's almost as if like, we're not going to use our powers here, guys. That's the biggest no possible. And then suddenly it's like, be ready to go. And yeah, it's great. It sets the tone, that oppressive tone you were talking about for 14.5.
Right. I mean, I would even say this is an unusually cliffhangery ending because you're like, oh God, like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, but it's we've talked about this in the show before, but it's cliffhangery in the way in which I like, where it doesn't necessarily stop a mid-beat. You know, I think I define like the difference between a cliffhanger and a game changer, right? Where a cliffhanger is just like mid-beat, we stop just for fun. A game changer is we've taken what we thought we had and then we've reoriented it based around a new piece of information. And that's basically what this is. It's like, we thought we were going to have this relatively calm conversation. It wasn't going to be that bad. It wasn't going to go that bad. They already agreed to speak with us and they already agreed to help us. And then suddenly, game change.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I agree. I guess it felt more like I can't stand to not know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's still part of it, absolutely. But it's not like an artificial like, nope, you don't get to see where the sword lands. Like I'm swinging a sword and cut. No, right. It's different.
that literally was in a book. Okay. So 14.5, and this chapter begins with introducing much of what will be a very interesting setting, situation, and conflict. So we're thrown into this without any real preparation, along with our character, into a situation that we don't really understand. And to make things worse, everything has to be interpreted and acted out through this weird cultural milieu that we don't understand. So like the delegates are all sitting in these weird chairs, and there's young scribes writing furiously, and it's just really, really weird.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right that it ratchets up the tension so much more because we're so like out of sorts here. Like this would be a tense conversation if it was with a culture we fully understand and our characters fully understood, and it would already be tense. But you take that and you put it in with a culture that's speaking a little differently, that has different cultural requirements, different expectations, different things that offend you. You put all that in there and yeah, it becomes something a whole lot more. It becomes something completely oppressive. And our powerful capes are rendered almost powerless. And it's really great.
Yeah, well, and eventually we kind of find out that they've almost collectively walked into a trap. Like the situation has been set up to be stacked against them. So yeah, this is another very complicated conversation chapter. I think it's superficially similar to 14.3, which was the big confrontation with Nieves, but this is a far different context and a far different execution, and it feels very different.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because we had this conversation about Wildbow dialogue after last week, and then boom, here's another chapter where he's doing things with dialogue, but it is in a very different way. This is different. It has a different goal. It's doing different things, and I really want to focus on that as we go through it because I think it's really a testament to the skill of a writer being able to kind of shift gears and do two different things around the same thing. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I agree. So Miss Militia's opening position here is that she's brought the heroes who helped bring down Goddess, and all they want in return for their action is goodwill. But beyond that, we kind of don't understand what's being said. We begin to suspect that it's a Darmok and Jalad type situation. Another, not going to explain the reference. Should I explain the reference, Scott?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in Star Trek The Next Generation, there's this episode where they encounter this culture where all the words they say are intelligible, but when they speak, it seems to be nonsense. And you should watch the episode, but the upshot is that they're basically talking in like parables and references all the time, such that if you don't know the references, you don't really understand. But once you figure that out, you can kind of infer things. It's not really what's happening here exactly. It's more like the content of what they're saying is partially embedded in wordplay. Yeah. And much of like it makes it difficult to translate because the nuance of what you have said isn't the transliteration of what you said. It may be embedded into the cleverness of the wordplay that you used. Yeah. And or at the very least, because we're not really sure how this works, it seems like people are like awarded points or just like appreciation for speaking more poetically.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a perfect example that we've pulled here where Miss Militia's saying they don't ask for much goodwill. Will is easy, good is free, yet goodwill can be the hardest thing to give. Winter climate affords bridges. Is it winter? Ignore the weather. It's chilly in here. And you're just like, what?
Yeah, it's like the only part of that I'm sure that I got is it's chilly in here, where she's responding to the tone of things, and everyone laughs at that, and like appreciating her wit. And you're like,
But it's great because like this is where the writing really shines to me, because we talked last week about how Gary's argument was something we could poke holes in all day, right? It's a very standard type of bad faith argument that we related to some real life people in our world that use this kind of real life argument, and we can easily attack that. We can easily be like, no, they're stupid. You're wrong, and here's why. We have no such context here. We're still on Victoria's side. We're still on the side of capes. There's some capes are bad, some capes are good, and you probably shouldn't hate all the capes. You probably should work with the people that like helped kill Goddess. But there's no standing here. There's nothing to hold on to because we're entirely powerless. Like Victoria can barely follow the conversation. She actually does a fairly good job at like catching on to some of the cultural norms just by observation. But like basically what has to happen is they have to fully trust Miss Militia, right? Because she's the only one that has this link. She's the only one. So every other cape here is rendered completely powerless in this conversation.
Yeah. That's. I mean, like that's why I'm fascinated with the role that Miss Militia is taking in these chapters, because she hasn't really been a character much in this story, and now she is
the most important one.
The most important one, and we don't really like. She knows so much more than we do. And we just have to trust her. We're in the same position as Victoria, actually, right, where we're just kind of like, well, I hope you know what you're doing here. And you seem to. Like, she seems very competent, but she also seems very, very worried and borderline sure that there's going to be violence breaking out.
Yeah. And she's doing this signal to Victoria that I love, that, like, she never told her about the signal. It's just like Victoria immediately catches wind of it. The rapid switching of the weapon thing she does.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool beat that Victoria is just observant enough to be like, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I'm not even sure what the signal means other than like, be ready. Right.
Yeah. I mean, what if it was just like, don't worry, everything's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, probably not, because she also does things
not.
like she looks at the guards pointedly and stuff like that.
I mean, she's definitely, I mean, like through context, she's definitely signaling. Yeah.
Right.
Part of what I think makes this work even better is Chris in the middle of this thing, serving as a constant antagonist. So we're already stressed out about this conversation we barely understand. And Chris is just continually chiming in at the worst freaking times. Like he just jumps in here and says, saying they played a role, maybe overstating it, relating to their interaction with Goddess. And it's just like, fuck you.
Right. Shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not like, even if he has an agenda, I don't see how saying that serves his agenda. Like, I mean, I'm sure he does. Like it's very kind of self-destructive for no reason, which I guess Chris can be that way, but he also, like, that's the fascinating paradox of Chris, is that we know him to be simultaneously extremely smart and clever and duplicitous, and also like an idiot. Like at the same time, depending on what exactly we're talking about. And it's like, is this just his ego here?
Yeah,
or
could
is
be.
it? Yeah, I mean, I think it is, but it could also be like, oh yeah, he has some 8-dimensional chess motive for being this way. I don't know. We'll see.
I also like it points out that he has a man's voice, and I'd even suspected it was deeper than an average, and she gets cut off there. But like, going in this idea of Chris like trying really hard to be this older adult person, the idea that he would make his voice lower than average to seem more mature, I think is kind of slots into that what we were talking about really well there.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this bit because I think this is actually hilarious, and it just shows, just when it comes to Amy, just the way Victoria behaves sometimes is great, because like she's observing in her head stuff about Chris, and like a man's voice, and I'd even suspected it was deeper than an average. And then Amy speaks out loud, "Don't make this harder." Amy rebuked him while interrupting my observation. So she's Victoria is speaking in her head about something. Amy speaks, and Victoria's like, fucking interrupted me.
Yeah, I'm derailed. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy, for speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, it shows that Amy speaking completely turns her, like, it completely shuts her mind down, right? Like, hearing her sister's voice, like, makes her brain go, "Brr," and just stop whatever it's doing, like, immediately. On the other, it's just like, you interrupted me. I just think it's funny.
We talk about, I mean, I think that's great. I also think it's interesting that Amy rebukes him, which she was basically in like a subservient role, like maybe not literally, but it definitely seemed that way back when we last saw her. And so she seems to have more power in the relationship now. So that's interesting. Another thing, I don't think I pulled out the quote, but I wish I had, because I think we definitely need to talk about it for at least a second, is this somewhere around here, Victoria thinks, or maybe it's later, but Victoria thinks something like, how could I have missed her voice and have it make me feel so uncomfortable at the same time?
Yeah. I don't know if that's right here or not, but that is this step. Yeah, that's we should have pulled that. That's fascinating little bit there that she really doesn't remark on very much. She just says it and then kind of moves on. It's an admission of something, and that's really complex. Yeah.
And I think that the fact is that that's always kind of been there, but like you said, she would never have phrased it that way to herself, admitted it to herself. Like I think that there's an interesting aspect to this that we don't talk about much because Victoria never thinks about it. But like the tragedy that Victoria never thinks about is that this is her best friend for her entire life.
Yeah.
Until a few years ago. Until a couple of years ago. Well, okay. She spent some time in the asylum. I got you. But like it's kind of like how when you break up with someone, you go through the painful phase of everything is bad, and then you kind of bury all of the good memories or at least like you just don't think about them anymore, and then those memories just kind of go into the memory hole forever, and you never think about them again because thinking about them is painful because like you now you're remembering something that you lost.
Yeah.
And so I think that she is kind of in that place with her whole relationship with her sister where they have this history which is not all negative. It's their whole childhood together.
Yeah.
And it's now like buried, and that is tragic, and that's not something she's ever thought about that way before.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason why this relationship, the relationship that is basically like the core of everything Victoria is going through, the core of her character, is so complicated. It's so complicated. There's nothing simple about any of this. And the fact that the book is willing to really sit with that complication for, I mean, we're 1 million words in, right? And we're really, like, I don't know how close we are to the end of the book, but like we're still uncovering folds and complications in how these people feel about each other. It's great. It's such an accurate depiction of human psychology. It really is, because like people are complex. We don't feel one thing. We feel multiple things at the same time. And a lot of times those things are contradictory and they don't make any sense, but they do kind of make sense. But it's so complex. And I just love that this book is willing to go there. Like, screw the superhero stuff. That's cool. But like, this is the complex nature of a relationship between two people. And I love it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where this really shines. I think that's where this Parahumans really shines. That's where Wildbow as a writer absolutely shines, is this ability to portray a fully realized human being, with all of the contradictions and things that are going on that even that person themselves isn't aware of, but is maybe kind of aware of. And then there's different layers of that. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It's not easy to do. And it's not, I think it's like, it's one thing to craft a character that has a real human psychology. It's another to like craft that character and then take them through a story, right? Because like, I mean, we're people, like actual real people, I think would make bad characters and stories, right? So you have to like both make them accurate to humanity, but also be a tool to tell a story in a way.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's a hard balance, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So one more thing I wanted to talk about is, as this whole conversation is kicking off, Natalie is like taken from the group and taken somewhere else, and being like, we want to talk to Natalie on her own because she has the best angle on the whole situation. And so Natalie is just kind of taken off to the side. And once again, you're like, oh my God, this poor lawyer is just like, I just want to do law stuff and hang with capes. And now she's like being grilled on her own in this private room, and like, they're probably not going to hurt her because she's non-cape, so they probably like her. But the interesting thing to me is, in this moment, Victoria says, I like Natalie. In the paranoia of the moment and the tension of the scene, I had to wonder how much I trusted her interpretation of events. And I would be like, Victoria, when are you going to throw Natalie a bone? Like,
yeah.
She likes capes a whole lot.
Yeah, right. Like, it's funny because Natalie is definitely going to try to spin things in their favor, but
yeah, absolutely.
Victoria doesn't trust that. I mean, I almost, in retrospect, wonder if this is like they're getting her out of there because they don't want a innocent human to be hurt when they try to massacre all these capes in a minute.
Yeah, but I mean, that's certainly part of the feeling, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's my feeling. And I think that's Victoria's feeling, but maybe that's not accurate. I don't know. That's the fun. That's the fun of it. We don't know.
Yeah.
So Amy seems to take really hard this statement that the deal to feed 2 million Gimel refugees has fallen through. And then even though Victoria guesses that this is just a gambit to kind of open up the conversation, open up the negotiations, Amy still visibly is like rocked by this statement. And it's interesting because is it that Amy doesn't, is it that Amy knows something that she doesn't? Like, it's really interesting I kind of got hung up actually on like Amy's reaction here and analyzing the meaning of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on in Amy right now that we have no window into at all. And so it's worth pondering that. I mean, I just like this idea that like everything we just said about Victoria and this complex, multifaceted character, I think the same is true for Amy. She did terrible things. She did awful things. And I think she's made mistakes that have made Victoria's process in dealing with those things worse over the course of this book. I think she has absolutely done that. But she's not like a monster. Like she's trying to do good. And I think this is a moment of her, like, she came over here, she had a plan, she was going to negotiate a thing that would help people, and she negotiated that thing successfully, and it was going to help people. And then something happened, something we don't know about yet, and now that is gone. And seeing her feel the consequences of that is, I think, is important. And we're seeing little bits and pieces of that. Remember, like when she stops Chris, when she says, don't make this any harder. And that's a very resigned statement, right? Like she's kind of very resigned to the consequences, resigned to the result, resigned to something that is going to happen to her now.
My take on Amy as a character at this moment is, if she's resigned to anything, it's not the idea that she's going to just roll over and let whatever happen. It's that she's resigned to the idea that she's going to have to do something terrible to win.
God, that's terrifying.
Like, because otherwise it's like, well, that's just not like, oh, okay, she's beaten down. Amy's kind of always been beaten down.
Yes.
And if this story is building to something, I don't feel like it's going to be, and then Amy gave up and left quietly.
Yeah.
So that's
no. I mean, yeah, I agree. I want to believe that that's not going to happen, but judging by the way this chapter ends, I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know. So one of the Shinians, Luis, who was basically Goddess's, sort of right hand. It seemed like they had a complicated relationship at the very least. He calls forth Swansong into what is basically a trap. They make sure that she doesn't have any real help to rely on, and then they back her into this corner of admitting that she killed her parents with her power. Yusuf, one of the other more talkative representatives of Shin, basically brags about having killed a young parahuman girl, and he doesn't feel at all remorseful about it, even when Miss Militia points out that she was under Goddess's thrall. Luis eventually gets around to maybe it's Luis, I don't know. He eventually gets around to offering to give Ashley the slave homunculi that were left behind, and also rulership over some islands. And it's perfect. It's exactly what Eclipse Ashley would have loved. She would have snapped that up without a second thought. And Swansong says no.
Yeah, I love this. So we just came off a chapter in which Ashley was accused of backsliding. And whether or not that was performative by the rest of Breakthrough or not, it's something that Victoria seemed to earnestly believe. This idea that underneath the Swansong, maybe there's just more damsel. Right.
Yeah.
So that idea is then in this chapter immediately put to the test, and it's a test that Ashley passes with flying colors. What I love about this is such kind of I hate using this word, but it's true. It's a contrived situation, right? Ashley is being literally, Ashley is being literally granted all the things that she wanted, but it is contrived. But it's contrived by the characters in the story, right? Right. I think it's such a good way to get around not that criticism, but that trope or whatever. That this is an in-world contrivance. They have created a situation that ties into exactly what Ashley would want. It's a trap. It's absolutely a trap. And you can argue that because it's so obviously a trap that it doesn't really signify the true reality of her change, that she said she knows this is a trap and that's why she says no, but fuck that.
Yeah. I don't think it's so obvious that Eclipse era Ashley wouldn't have still fallen for it.
Yeah, well, she's surrounded by landmines, right? She's been insulted. She's been forced to speak out loud what she did to her parents. They're riling her up in very specific ways. They're trying to upset her, and then they're granting her the exact thing that she wants. These are damsel-shaped landmines, and the reason why she doesn't step on them is because she's Swansong. And that, I mean, it's beautiful. I love it. Do you get it now, Victoria? Do you see this now? Do you see the change? Do you stop doubting this change in her?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I feel, like we were right to say that her change is real.
Yeah, I mean, listen to, like, I just want to read this because it's so beautiful. We come from a place of powerlessness. Hold down someone at the floor of a lake, and they fight to come up for air. But the fight doesn't stop there. We put distance between ourselves and the water, and that's beautiful. And of course, it like ties exactly into their method of talking, right? Like Luis is like, she told you we liked our proverbs. Like, nah, that's just me.
Yeah, that's just
this is just how I talk.
Yeah, if anything, that's a damsel thing to do.
Right, yeah,
yeah.
I love it. I'm so proud of her. Like, it's just you were tempted and you passed.
Yeah, I like how you point out that it's the kind of situation where, like, it works extremely well because it's literally a contrived situation, right? It's like a perfect dramatic situation, and I feel like this is another of Wildbow's strengths, which I think kind of comes across in a meta way in a lot of our discussion questions. Is like it's like he thinks to himself, what if this trope, except good, and then he makes that work.
Yeah,
because that's kind of what this feels like to me.
Yeah, because I mean, I think a lot of this is what is happening here is fairly traditional as far as storytelling, right? Is you have a character who is moving through their arc, and then they're tempted with things that person before the change would have wanted, right? Like it's a very traditional, standard kind of character beat, right? But he has mixed up a little bit.
Yeah.
And make the metaphorical literal in interesting ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that interaction. I thought that was great. That was, I don't know, maybe my favorite part of the chapter. This is a great chapter overall. I don't know if I said that. I
love this chapter. It was not my favorite part of the chapter.
Okay.
Because we haven't gotten to it yet.
It's got a lot of great points. So yeah, they like we've hinted at, they admit that they were testing her because she had the potential to be the worst of them.
And she rankles at that, Matt. Yeah. I think that's such a good touch that we just look over and Ashley's like, and I mean this ties us back to the first, like one of the first conversations Ashley and Victoria had in the book, right? Where she's like, if you think I'm the worst one here, you're wrong. Yeah. Like it's great through line.
Yeah.
And also symbolic of I'm the fucking best, yo. Not the worst.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why she's mad about it. She's like, I'm better than all these people.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was right. She wasn't the worst of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Miss Militia gets called the best of them, which is again like hey, good for you.
Right.
Good for you, Hannah.
Yeah. And no one present objects or has any thoughts about that. It's like, yeah, of course she is.
Yeah. We do learn here another little peek into the Amy house that we don't really get to see is they say that Amy tried to make her point and argue about what happened, and they didn't accept it. So she has an excuse, she has a reason for why whatever happened, but Shin was uninterested in it.
Yeah, I love that we're holding back what happened because like the more time that passes, the less I feel like I know. Like at first I was just like, oh, I mean, she retched somebody else. And I'm like, well, no, that seems really, that actually seems minor relative to the big of it, like the level of concern everyone seems to have here. Like,
yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be much more easily fixable than the potential of what she could do, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm terrified to find out what it was. So shortly after this, Miss Militia basically kind of arranges to have all the Parahumans moved into an adjacent area, a greenhouse patio, so that she can talk alone with the Shin delegation. She warns them to be careful, and the whole chapter from this point is suffused with this looming dread of violence. So they've got many guards around them, hemming them in with weapons. Vicky's in this room with Chris, Marquis, her mom and dad, and Amy, which is just the worst, like maximally bad for Vicky. Like all we need to really round things out, really round out the party would be if like Weld, Egg, Kenzie's parents, Paris, Damsel and let's just say Mama Mathers were also present.
Why the fuck? Why would you say that? That's gonna happen now.
Yeah, no.
What's wrong with you?
I was just listing everyone's like the worst person who could be there, but now I'm pictured it. So yeah.
Before we really dive into this scene, which we're gonna do because it's amazing, I want to focus on the setting a little bit here. Victoria describes this as a greenhouse patio. So like presumably this place is almost entirely glass, right? Nothing but windows. It's basically the most open concept room that could exist without just like being outside. And Victoria, it's nothing but oppressive. It's crowded. It's trapped. It's small. There's this juxtaposition that goes on here as we're setting the scene, and I think it's beautiful. The text focuses on the snow piling up around the sides of the greenhouse, presumably covering a lot of these windows. A lot of the windows are now being covered by the snow. So that's juxtaposition. It's like you're free to see outside, but the snow is covering it. The cold is encroaching on the space, but she describes inside the greenhouse patio as warm. That's a juxtaposition. She's trapped in this room with all these people, but then describes the 15 feet that separates her from her sister as a gulf. That's a juxtaposition. It's really good, right? It's like this insane, and it matches exactly how Victoria acts for the rest of this entire chapter, which is like half here, half not. Like even the writing, the style of the writing changes, how the sentences are constructed, how the paragraphs are constructed changes around this, and I love it.
Yeah, we get a lot of short paragraphs, don't we?
Yep.
And just to bring back our color thing, at one point she describes the snow piling on the windowsill as being blue, which like I think that's interesting because I think we all know what it like. You look at it, you look at snow, you know, and you think of blue, even if technically it's not. Like even if it's just white.
Yeah.
That there's something about, I guess it's the coldness, and so we're bringing back. You know, we've got blue coupled with isolation, cold, a feeling of suffocation, and which is often coupled with water also, which is also suffocating. So it just bringing back the colors into the chapter.
Really freaking great. It sets the setting perfectly. You feel it. You feel it all. You feel how something can be simultaneously this huge space between the characters, but feel like no space at all. And I love it.
So Rain opens up the conversation, talks to Chris, and Chris is a complete and utter douche, shockingly. I mean, the whole exchange is just gold, and it's actually kind of enjoyable on a level, but also painful.
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone kind of pinging off each other in fun ways, except that lightheartedness of it is gone, and it's much more barbed and intense. Like everyone's talking in terse sentences. Like the things people are saying is short. No one's speaking for too long. And in the midst of it, between almost every bit that Victoria says or observes, she's constantly looking around. She's looking at Amy. She's looking at her mom. She's looking outside her window at Miss Militia. And we see that Natalie has joined her again. So they pulled Natalie out again. So once again, here's Natalie stuck in the middle of all this stuff. So they're in this room of glass where like everything is exposed, including yourself. And she's just looking around, and all these conversations are happening, and it's so good.
Yeah. I feel like glass and windows has been a symbol maybe, or something that we may have overlooked. I mean, obviously, like it's silly to say like something that exists in the real world and is ubiquitous is definitely a symbol that means something. But I feel like maybe in this story it does.
Yeah. Well, let's just pay attention to that.
Yeah. So Victoria asks her mom if she's okay, and her mom is pretty like low key for Carol. She says she'll recover, but that they're moving slowly, which has a lot of implications to it. Like there's hints in what she's saying that there's just so much going on that isn't being shared, and Sveta is actually the one who is, if anything, pushing. Victoria is not pushing, and Amy just keeps saying it's handled.
Yeah, that's such a terrifying repetition there, right?
Yeah.
And even the second one is italicized for emphasis, right? Like it's handled. And I love like this whole part is great because there's this line in here in the middle that says you're moving slowly because dear daughter fucked up and now you're both scared. And the book doesn't tell you who said that. There's no said Chris.
Right.
But come on.
Right.
It's definitely Chris that said that. And
Yeah.
I love it. I love that like Victoria uses this as a conversation starter because she needs a distraction because she's starting to dive into herself a little bit here as this oppressive shadow is clouding her. So her mom is a distraction here. Focusing on her mom is a distraction, which is crazy. But that I think that shows how bad she is right now, that reaching out to her mom is seen as something that'll help her get through this moment.
Yeah, and also I think that this idea that her mom might not fully recover is something that's been looming over her in a way that she may not even fully realize. For what, weeks now, right?
Yeah, but I mean, do you have any idea? Like, what? I don't understand. I don't know what this could be. Like, they saying they're moving slowly, and she's walking not perfectly either.
Well, I mean, it's funny that I didn't formulate the thought until you said that, but I think that that Carol has some brain damage, and Amy has fixed everything except the brain, and now she's moving slowly on fixing the brain because she's lost confidence in her ability to work on brains, because every time she's worked on brains, something god awful has happened.
Yeah, and she might have started a little bit, and then something went wrong. And
Yeah,
she freaked the hell out.
Yeah,
called a stop to it.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe with someone else too. That's what's interesting is we're not what she fucked up on. I'm not sure if it was Carol related or something else related. I feel like it was something else related.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Like we got little hints at the idea that maybe one of the things they're going to be doing in this world is making people not be criminals anymore. And I don't know if the text ever explicitly said that was part of Amy's plan, or if that's just like what Victoria assumed she was going to do, and then Carol was like, "Yeah, what's wrong with that? That sounds great." But I mean, that implication has been thrown around. So yeah, I mean, you're right. There's so much, and the fact that no one's speaking of it except for Chris, except for the guy who will speak about anything. And even he's not going into the details of what it was, is very ominous. It's very, like, it again, turns up that tension dial.
Yeah. It's great. So I like this. This is fantastic. So Victoria's basically distracting herself by, like, she's facing the window. She's facing away from everyone. And she's trying to, like, immerse herself in sensation because she's so close to, like, literally falling down on the floor. And it says, I reached out for the exterior window, touching glass that had snow on the far side. I traced a finger along and drew in the moisture a circle. I blotted out the interior. The cold moisture and the touch helped ground to me. And it's black. It's the circle. It's the symbol.
It is. Yeah, it is the symbol she drew when asked as part of her homework, when asked to kind of visualize how she's feeling. And so we have automatically connected Victoria back to how she felt at the moment, right before she was worried about what was going to go on with Sveta and all that stuff. So it's a great callback. It's really, I love it. I love it so much. We kind of immediately, like, we feel like we knew how she was doing, right? But now we've kind of quantified it, right? We've just, like, quantified just how bad this is.
Yeah. I love that. And it's a callback, but it's a callback that you could easily miss.
Yeah.
Right? It's a callback you could even argue that's not what that is. I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
But
I'm definitely sure it is.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so, I mean, it is easily missable for sure.
Yeah. So Victoria basically collapses in on herself, like she's, like, leaning her forehead against the cold window, basically just, like, trying to, like, not be here. But also, this is one time when she's kind of passively tracking where everybody in the room is based on hearing.
Yeah.
And kind of listening to what they're doing. And then her mom kind of moves away from the table with Amy and joins her at the window.
Yeah, the writing here as she's kind of looking around gets so good, Matt. Like we talked about how short it gets crazy short here. Like, Amy, I'd wanted to face my demon and I put myself in a glass cell with it. You don't have to move. I'll go back to where I was standing. I'm stiff, that's all. Marquis' statement. My mother's response. Sveta let my mom past, taking Kenzie with her. Tristan watched. Kenzie listened. My mom stood beside me. The guard to my right. Like, these are all, like, short, like, and they're short, terse, quick sentences. It's really off-putting, kind of.
Yeah, and I love the kind of writerly confidence that goes into. I'm going to read it again. You don't have to move. I'll go back to where I was standing. I'm stiff. That's all. Marquis' statement, mother's response, and it takes you a second to be like, okay, oh, okay. Carol stood up, and 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 Marquis thinks it's to get away from him, and Carol's saying, no, I'm just stiff and I'm going for a walk, which is a lie.
Yeah.
Because she's trying to go signal Victoria. So like I don't know. This is just great. It's great. It's the kind of thing that I'm always like trying to understand, because Wildbow's communicating a huge amount of stuff while writing like as little as he can possibly get away with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's using structure to tell the story here.
Yeah.
Once again. And it's such, the writing is so disjointed, right? Like, I mean, it really is like disturbing somehow. All of this was like, it's so emotionless, and like she's barely here. She's looking, she's seeing these things, but she's barely there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And so then, Carol is basically pretending that they're just chatting. She's drawing the brandish and the flashbang symbols on her side of the window in fog, or in the fog rather. And she says she's sorry. Well, no, she doesn't say she's sorry. She says me too when Victoria says she's sorry.
Yeah. That's as Carol. That's as close to you're going to get with Carol.
But like, what's kind of awesome is like if Carol had given a heartfelt apology, it would have felt fake, because Carol has her checklist. And if Carol's going to apologize, she's going to apologize by the checklist and make sure that it's a big PR moment. But her like in a defeated and quiet voice saying me too is infinitely more horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. You buy it. You believe that moment. And then following it up with she's not well.
Yeah.
This is the holy shit moment of this chapter. And because like, okay, so first of all, we do this thing where Carol is drawing on the window as well. So we have Victoria draws a circle on the window, and then Carol draws brandish and flashbang symbols as well. And later we see that she's doing that for a specific purpose, I think. That's my interpretation. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
She's specifically saying, when she's saying we need help, she's saying we as in the two of us.
Yeah.
But it also links her and Victoria together, because now they're both drawing on the same window, right? Like, so that's a natural link between them. And brandishes and flashbangs symbols are circular, with details in it. So Victoria draws the circle on the window. Carol comes over to her, gives her a hug, and then starts drawing her own circles. And it's like we've kind of linked emotionally these two characters in a way that, like, you and I have been talking about how similar Carol and Victoria can be at times, like throughout this whole story. And the book has kind of linked them together emotionally in this scene. And I just think it makes this moment land so much better because of that.
Yeah. You know what else this connects to is one of the maybe most important moments in the book, where Victoria is standing next to the window and lets out her force field. We don't know what it looks like yet, and we see the impression of it appear on the window.
That's so great. I forgot about that. That's a good pull.
Until this moment. And I feel confident that it's connected, right? Because I feel a little bit more confident actually in this idea that windows mean something in the story.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then of course we have like, this moment is a book's worth of Carol paying off, because we know Carol. We know how stubborn and ridiculous Carol can be, especially when it comes to her daughters. So we know that if Carol has gotten to a point where she's going to admit that there's a problem with Amy, that Amy's not well, it's got to be real bad, man. I mean, that's your mind immediately goes like, if it's so bad that Carol sees it, shit.
Yeah. Yep. And like you said, she writes, we need help. She starts another word, but then a guard moves casually my mom to wipe the message away. She met my eyes for a moment, then focused her gaze intently on the snowstorm outside. It's so good. Right?
It's so good. It's so good.
It's chilling.
And I mean, it's funny because it's kind of, it is kind of a cliffhanger, but it's a different. It's not the sword swinging, right? Like, but in the back of your mind, you're like, a vertical line. What letter was that going to be? And you're like, well, you're going through the alphabet of what that could be. And I don't know, but like you're invested, and once again, like the implications. The cliffhanger here is not what's going to happen. The cliffhanger is the implications of this. It changes everything. Like Carol, shit.
Yeah.
What's going on with Amy? Oh my God, what's happening with Amy? They're in the middle of this already tense situation, and now not only do they need to save themselves from the entirety of the government of Shin being against them, but possibly whatever the fuck is going on with their daughter.
Yeah. I just love that. I mean, just to harp on Wildbow being a genius for character again, like you might say Carol isn't acting like Carol. I don't think that's true. I think that we know this is what Carol acts like when she's scared shitless. She doesn't act like her normal self. She acts like this, right? Like that, and that's conveying the seriousness of the situation so much better. So I love this. I love this. It's great chapters. I'm really excited to see where this arc is going. This book is good.
Me too. I can't wait. I want more.
Yep, but not right now, because we got to do some community spotlight before we wrap up. So, yeah, the discussion question from last week was contrast Wildbow's approach and style in writing dialogue scenes with another storyteller. We left storyteller open because that can really mean a lot of different things. So the first answer is from...
So I think we should say that, like, we got less answers than we normally do, but they were very long answers, so that all evens out. You guys had a lot to say about this, and I think that's great. So we're going to read more than we normally would. For these answers.
So the first answer was from Phip Industries, who compares Wildbow's dialogue style to Andrew Hussey, author of Homestuck, which neither Scott nor I have read.
Yep.
When a character says a statement, they will tend to talk in a punctual, organized manner. Their sentences will sound proper, with clauses and subclauses properly addressed. Whenever this pattern is broken, is to deliberately signal that the character is under emotional stress or their mind has been compromised. Yet he always aims for a naturalistic tone all the same. He favors short statements, sometimes as short as one word, constantly. He breaks up long paragraphs so he doesn't have characters monologuing until they should have run out of air. His characters tend to be young adults. He will give them colloquialisms. He'll make them drop swears every now and then. They will talk in a casual tone. But the thing is that overall the format will not be that of an essay. Will be that of an essay. There is meticulously crafted intentionality in his dialogues, as opposed to, like, I don't know, just the way people talk. In general, I mean, like, we can't really put the whole entire thought into a whole complete polished sentence. We will pause, we will stop, get our bearings, use crutches. We will realize that the sentence we want to say is not like, working to what we wanted, and is like we will have to restructure the whole thing on the fly or something. And also we reiterate, people tend to repeat themselves all the time, like all the time. No, I mean like all the time until we make the person we're talking to say, yeah, I get you, at least 5 times before we stop. I don't know. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, we get you.
That's fun. On the other hand, Hussey will go in the complete opposite. Regardless of mood or context, he will pull long, winding, almost improvisational strings of loquacious sesquipedalianism, going on a billion different tangents while peppering it with absolute bogus silliness and crass swears, making a jarring contrast of the whole thing. His characters feel like a mix between a bratty teenager and a pretentious thesaurus. He will indulge in walls of text that make his characters draw long, overwrought metaphors that they will improvise off the cuff. And yet it will all flow with the wax and wane and winding current of a train of thought being chronicled as it occurs. The results is that they feel like real-life ramblings of a person that you are actually talking to face, to the point that every time I read his dialogues, I can't help but read them out loud, which never happens to me with any other author. That's really cool. And I thought this was a great comparison, because it's almost like two main schools of thought. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just like Wildbow and Andrew Hussey, right? Like this is two different styles of doing dialogue writing. And I have writers who I would say I like in both camps of this. And the thing is that both ways are actually hard to do right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the one thing I liked, I think I think FIP Industries put words to Wildbow's dialogue in a way that I don't know if I've ever been able to do myself, and exactly what he's doing and how it works and stuff like that. And I look at these things and I'm like, yeah, okay, I understand why I like Wildbow's more. I've never read, like I said, I've never read Homestuck, so I can't directly compare these authors, but I don't necessarily in all my stories want a reproduction of exactly how people talk in my stories, because that could be really annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I think it's funny because we're doing a podcast, and I think what we do is actually, even though we have a script, we pretty much talk like people talk. But I just don't know if I want that in my story. I could see if you want that in your stories. To me, to me, Wildbow's is naturalistic in a storytelling sense. So it doesn't, it feels real enough, you know?
Well, it reminds me of in Blindsight when the narrator breaks from the story for a second and says, "This isn't how people were really talking, by the way. Like they were talking in a pidgin of languages and like gesturing vaguely and like sharing visuals with each other and grunting and because the conceit of that story is a bit different. But like nobody wants to read all that, and I can see, like, what's funny is the only author I can really think of off the top of my head who I think really nails colloquial dialogue is actually my brother, which it may be a strange pull, but like I can't think of a ton who do it great, right? Like when I try to do it that way, I hate it. It never works right. Like it's just like it's pretty much like if you just transcribe our podcast, we sound
that
like
would look
morons.
awful. Yeah, we do. In some, like, I think the worst comments we've ever gotten is when I'm having a disagreement with someone and they pull a transcript of what I actually said in the episode, and I was like, "Oh God, I'm stupid."
Yeah, why would you attack me like that by quoting me?
Yeah, how dare you quote me?
Because that's the way human beings actually talk, and
right.
and it's a tried and true like literary tradition and style that no, we're not going to write it that way. We're going to write it as if people are smarter. Like that's one thing I was really noticing this reading the Neil Stephenson novel recently, where like everyone is speaking like perfectly. Like everyone is so smart and speaking so perfectly, and that's kind of why you're reading it. It's like smart people porn. Like I want to read like the smartest person I can possibly read.
Yeah, and
that's intentional.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing from this answer though is that, some people like it the other way too. That I think the way presumably Andrew Hussey writes his is a lot of people enjoy naturalistic almost to a fault, and I think that's fascinating. And
yeah, cool.
Yeah. All right, let's move on because we spent a lot of time on that. Next up is Sarah Penguin, who mostly listens to or reads romance novels. So rather than compare, God, I can't talk anymore, Wildbow to a specific author, she wants to compare them to trends within those type of novels. Most romance novels don't have physical conflict and tension that cape fights can provide, so they need to get it all just from people talking. They also need to get the reader emotionally invested in the protagonist's feelings for the love interest. This leads to emotions of the conversation being one of the most important things. Wildbow seems to let you know how a person is feeling and then just trusts the reader to put that emotion to the conversation rather than constantly reminding the reader of the emotions of the words. Other authors might add a lot of verbs to the conversation instead, or have the person speaking animate their emotions. While this can be good to get across the emotions, it does break the flow of the conversation, which when overdone can make the dialogue less engaging. While breaking the flow of a conversation can be necessary or even used effectively, when overdone, it takes away from the work rather than adding. That's really good points, Matt.
Yeah.
I like this idea of letting the dialogue flow. And I agree that Wildbow sometimes like shies away from a lot of descriptive words in his like surrounding the dialogue, right?
Yeah. I've tried to learn this. I've tried to adopt this because I have a tendency, I think a lot of people do, you see it a lot actually, especially non-professional writers, if you will. But even like I think there was some of this in that Mistborn book that we just read, where it's the writer will write the dialogue scene as if they are describing something that they are picturing in their head and describing the physical appearance of it. So and so says something, there was a pause, other person looked to the side and then responded. First person turned their back, walked to the window, and then responded. Like it's like you're blocking a stage play.
Yeah.
It's not the way people. It's not what Wildbow does. Like he's what people are actually doing, unless it's a really important thing, like smacking someone in the chest so hard they bounce into the wall, is or a window in that particular case, is kind of interrupts what you're trying, like it interrupts the picture you're trying to paint, right? You're trying to prompt the reader to paint a picture in their head. You're not trying to paint the whole picture for them. And that's why I like what Wildbow does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, there's like this fear of using the word said. I see a lot in people just starting out writing. Like they want every, instead of using said, they want an emotion attached to that, right? Exclaimed, shouted, like, or adding an adverb to it, right? Sometimes you just need to trust that the emotion will carry through the scene and just say, they said it, and you'll know how they said it by the words around it. Yeah. Or the words in it.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'm pretty sure that using words other than said is usually discouraged because it becomes distracting. Like I really do like framing it as like if you need to use those words, then your reader doesn't know the character well enough. Mm-hmm. If you don't know that they're angry, definitely don't say that the person said it angrily, because they should already know that they're angry.
Right. If you haven't established that the person said it angrily, except for that word said angrily, you might have screwed up your scene.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Next answer from Drew Hayes. And leading into this, and while the premises for the stories between him and I'm sorry, I'm crappy at reading. The poster is exe JPEG Windows Movie file, and the writer that they're referencing is Drew Hayes.
That'd be cool if we got Drew Hayes to answer a discussion question.
Right.
Me.
Yeah. And while the premises for the stories between him and Wildbow are only superficially similar, they both craft character interaction in a way that feels incredibly organic and realistic to me. But the methods used are distinctly different. Wildbow mostly has us rooted in a strictly first-person perspective of a single protagonist. This allows the reader to become intimately familiar with the protagonist's thoughts, emotions, biases, and assumptions on a near constant basis. This makes conflicts that arise between the main character and others seem much more personable. It often leads to very interesting, unreliable narrator situations that provide further insight into the main character. While Drew Hayes, in most of his more popular works, uses a third-person perspective on a mostly central group of people, instead of a single protagonist. This naturally allows readers to have a wider perspective on who is doing what and why, from side characters to major antagonists. And since Drew doesn't write underdog stories, these social interactions and conflicts aren't often the main focus of an arc in the story. They all tend to have a slow burn of conflict toward a usually definitive conclusion, usually multiple conflicts occurring at once so as to avoid stagnation or boredom. Yeah, I like that. That's that's kind of more in the on a more meta level of how things are arranged. I mean, definitely a third person perspective covering a group of people has a very different feel than what Parahumans does. Even if we're in an interlude, we're still in close third person. So yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. Me from Mars wants to compare Wildbow to Terry Pratchett. Wow. Both authors know how to write different perspectives well, each character having their own voice, even in cases where they might share common vocabulary, i.e. breakthrough with respect to how group therapy influences how they address each other. Victoria sounds different from Aisha, from Chevalier, from Taylor, from Rain, from Vista, just like, for Pratchett, Sam Vimes sounds different from Rincewind, from Carrot, from Granny Weatherwax, from Crowley, from Death. There's a weight to what the cast of characters say, since we the readers can feel the author's words behind them. Both authors do well to show the setting through their characters' biases and language choices, making, for example, Brockton Bay and Ankh-Morpork feel like places one could visit. I haven't read a lot of Pratchett, so I don't know any of these things. Both take their time with this world construction as well, letting the dialogue flow more naturally with the plot pivoting to keep up. Both authors show marked improvement with regards to this as well. Worm reads very differently than Ward, just as the color of magic reads differently than the Shepherd's Crown. I like those a lot.
Yeah.
They do say that some of the differences, Pratchett is usually aiming at a point with his characters talking, thinking, whereas Wildbow tends for more open-endedness. This isn't a bad thing for either author, more of an artifact of their intent. Wildbow throws his characters into morally gray situations where there's usually no correct answers. Often it's more about seeing how different characters may react. Alternatively, Pratchett is analyzing, parroting, satiring something, and he uses his characters to highlight the hilarity and merits of these topics. Yeah, I like that. That's really good, actually.
And I think that's how both writers use that they have something they're trying to do or something they're interested in, and the nature of the dialogue is shaped by that, which I think is how it should be, right? Like you shouldn't let your preferred way of writing dialogue shape the kind of story you tell, right? It seems like it should be the other way around, I would say, in my humble opinion. All right, next from Death of the Artist. Wildbow has a very specific and unique authorial voice when he writes dialogue, so much so that I can't really think of any comparable authors in literature. Wildbow's dialogue always feels like it has a point in a way that is not reflective of reality. Dialogue always furthers the plot or feels like it's conveying a very specific point, and that's just not the case in most other books that are that are as well written as Wildbow's work is. That is, however, the case in movies. I'm going to compare Wildbow's dialogue to the dialogue written by Akira Kurosawa. Both of these authors have an extremely internal method of writing dialogue. They start with archetypes, characters whose motivations and angles are immediately made apparent to the audience, and then allow them to work toward their goals, either affirming or subverting those stereotypical archetypes. Fundamentally, though, these authors always work to immediately lay the groundwork to convey to the audience what these characters' traits and goals are. Kurosawa famously would give his actors a single movement or expression to repeat constantly throughout the film, something that made who the character is clear to the audience, so the groundwork is always there for characters to play off of one another later. This feels to me like what Wildbow is doing when he leads off most dialogue scenes with intricate descriptions of clothing and demeanor. Most authors, when dealing with characters that are pre-established, might not bother with the redescription, but Wildbow finds it paramount to convey each character's mental state beforehand so that dialogue can flow smoothly and without too much establishment. They each leave most of their dialogue between the lines in body language, positioning, and posture being exchanged. Most of my favorite dialogue scenes in Wildbow's work, especially Pact, have paragraphs of description and thought processes between each line. Dialogue isn't a frivolity, but more frequently a competition of ideals with strategies and goals clashing, but with sparse wording. Wow, I really love that answer.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah, and that's great to compare him to a filmmaker, because I do think that there is something very like some of these answers have commented on the fact that Wildbow's dialogue doesn't sound like the way people talk, but the thing is, the dialogue in movies also doesn't sound like the way people talk, right? It sounds like
oh no, never, like literally never.
Yeah,
naturalistic dialogue in movies is some of the most obviously scripted dialogue ever.
Yeah, or it's called mumblecore for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's the school of writing that I think is most popular, actually.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Last but certainly not least, we have Manukos, who says that Wildbow's talking scenes always reminded me of Brandon Sanderson. This is perfect because we just talked about him.
Yeah.
Every side character, even the minor ones, have a distinct voice and point of view that comes across. Plus, both of them can write so fun and witty dialogues that I wouldn't mind, and in some cases would crave, a couple of chapters of people talking in a room and nothing else. Initially, the attention given to names like Missy for Vista go a long way for quickly characterizing characters, so we get a sense of, in one word, which is crucial for their interludes. That's great, because I think we said the exact same thing during our book club on Friday night in regards to Sanderson's characters, and that just their names gave so much characterization to them and how they're used in the dialogue. That's great.
Yeah. To hear more, check out our book club released in the Doof Media podcast, the Doofcast.
Yeah.
All right. And then there was a general comment that was not related to the discussion question, which I liked a lot, and Scott did too. Mm-hmm. David Hunt pointed out that Victoria's strong dislike of the Empire 88 people might be more than a little specifically motivated than we indicated. They reminded us that it was basically a kid looking to earn street cred to join the racist gang who killed Fleur. So basically, her aunt was killed by someone looking to join this gang. So it's personal.
I wrote that sentence very poorly. I apologize for making you read that out loud.
I hope I pulled it out, but that's okay.
Yes, there was a kid trying to earn enough cred to join Empire 88, and they killed Fleur. And Victoria's hatred of them is not just general.
But Nazis
bad,
yeah.
but also Nazis bad. But it's very specific to her as well. Yeah,
and I like that Victoria doesn't make that connection because we're not always aware of our motives, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, new discussion question for next week. What is your favorite in all of Parahumans, your favorite small, minor background character reaction? Something as minor. And the reason I bring this up is there were several instances in these chapters where a character silently reacts to something that is happening. And Victoria describes that to us in her narration.
Yep.
And it kicks off an entire chain of thought in your mind, right?
Yep.
And I think that's amazing. And I noticed several in these chapters, and so I thought, hey, I know he does this a lot. So tell us your favorite example of this in all of the stories. In all of the Parahuman stories, at least.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or over at our Twitter account at gotwormpod. My personal Twitter is at scottdaily85, and Matt's is at Mordinamail. And Matt is funny. Follow Matt.
Thank you.
Don't follow me. I don't tweet enough.
I try. I'm trying to bring up my tweet game. It's an art form.
It is.
If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Ward, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts.
And as always, you can find this and all the other podcasts we do over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you'll find our wide variety of shows. This week, we're having a super special bonus episode, Matt, that should be out by the time you're listening to this. You and your brother talked about the new Neil Stephenson book.
Yeah, the new Neil Stephenson book that comes out tomorrow.
Or yesterday if you're in the future.
Or yesterday if you're in the future.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun doing that. And if you're a Neil Stephenson fan, maybe check out the non-spoiler section, which is about 35 seconds long.
I edited this podcast and I have not read the book. And
sorry about that.
It was very funny when all right, moving into the spoiler section, and I look at the time on the podcast. It's like, oh, it's like 2 minutes.
We couldn't help ourselves.
I understand, believe me. But yeah, that'll be over. It is in our Doofcast feed, so if you haven't subscribed to that feed, or you can just go to the website or YouTube. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
And if you like our shows, this show, Deep Impact, Secret Neil Stephenson podcasts, you can donate.
Is that what I'm supposed to name it? I haven't actually named the thing yet.
Just
Secret Neil Stephenson podcast.
Yeah, that's the name of it. Yep. You can donate, $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to us on Patreon. Patreon gives you tons of great bonuses like voting in our quarterly fan art and costume contests, Q&A sessions, access to live streams of our recording sessions, and our excellent Discord chat. Special thanks this week to new Bidoofs, Logan C., and My Chemical Ramus at the $1 level.
Such a great
We appreciate y'all, and we appreciate your names. Pizza Hot Dog Lover at the $2 level, and Thomas H at the $5 level. And also we appreciate new Doof Troop member Zachary E at the $10 level. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thanks, guys. We're getting so close to our next goal, and I'm very excited. So we appreciate every single one of you that continues to support us.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm so excited.
Scott's going to make me read a book.
I'm going to make you read so many books.
I know.
Make you read infinity books.
Yeah. Well, and of course, while you're over there on Patreon, make sure you go over to patreon.com/Wildbow and donate to him as well. This is his world. We're just playing in it.
And if you cannot afford to donate right now, that is absolutely okay. You can instead help us out by heading on over to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a rating and a review. I don't have any ones to read.
Still none?
It's just a whole month.
Oh my God.
I'm so sad.
Someone help.
Please help me. Compliment me, please.
Evaluate and rank me. Well, that's it for this week's show. Next week on the show, we will continue with Breaking.
Oh, and I think it's going to be good.
Yep.
I'm excited.
Me too.